Tonight, the deadly mass shooting at a college campus in Florida.
It didn't feel real the entire time, and then it felt very real when I looked and saw an officer with an assault rifle, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening.
At least 2 people killed, several wounded after shots were fired at Florida State University in Tallahassee. The shocking developments about where the shooter got the gun. Tonight, the high-stakes resentencing hearing for Lyle and Eric Menendez after more than 30 years behind bars for murdering their parents. The brothers' latest bid for freedom and the last-minute curveball the district attorney threw the judge. The ABC News exclusive, George Stephanopoulos one-on-one with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro inside his home just days after that arson attack with his family inside. And the wild story out of Central America, a deadly hijacking of a small plane, the American citizen who seized the aircraft at knife point, and how a passenger on the plane took him down midair. Plus,
he was placed in, what's been known as their gladiator arena and brutally beaten.
A leaked video has sparked a massive scandal, uncovering an alleged fight club featuring gladiator-style brawls in a California juvenile hall. And a divorce, a split from the foundation in her name, and now a new book that talks about it all. Our extensive sit-down with Melinda French Gates, and why now was the right time for the world to know her story.
You seem, in general, like a private person. Why go so public with your story?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos, in for Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We are following late-breaking news this evening involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia. That's the Maryland father wrongfully sent to an El Salvador prison, and a meeting with Senator Van Hollen there. Much more on that in just a moment, but we begin with another mass shooting in America, the second at a school this week. Florida State University in Tallahassee is the site of tragedy tonight. 2 people are dead and 5 more were transported to the hospital with gunshot wounds. The alleged gunman was shot and is now in custody. Just before noon today, students sprinting for safety from the student union as law enforcement flooded the scene, a nightmare becoming reality.
Never really think this would actually happen, especially like in my area or around me to people I know or my peers.
The suspect is 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner. He is the son of an active duty sheriff's deputy. He was also a member of the county's Youth Advisory Council.
Unfortunately, her son had access to one of her weapons, and that was one of the weapons that was found at the scene.
The university president praised law enforcement for their immediate response that prevented further tragedy. We will hear firsthand from an FSU student who was on campus today, plus Jared Bourgoin, the former chief of the San Bernardino Police Department, joins us in just a moment. But first, here's Faith Abube at the scene in Tallahassee, Florida.
Keep your hands up, walk out this door.
Tonight, terrifying scenes of officers clearing classrooms at Florida State University. Students with their hands in the air after authorities say a student who is the son of a Leon County Sheriff's deputy opened fire, killing at least 2 people. Students and staff running from the Student Union building just before noon in the middle of the sprawling campus in Tallahassee. A chaotic scene at the school as local, state, and federal law enforcement agents race to the scene. Danielle Estridi telling our Terry Moran she saw injured students.
I did see at least one. The law enforcement had took that person out on a stretcher and laid them in the street until EMS showed up. There was one person across the way that seemed to get escorted in an office chair with wheels, and they got wheeled down to the street. Armed officers clearing classrooms one by one.
Listen up real quick. We're trying to get all of you out of here in a timely manner. It's going to be a minute because there's a lot of you.
Holden Mamula describing seeing an officer with a gun.
It didn't feel real the entire time, and then it felt very real when I looked and saw an officer with an assault rifle, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening.
A music professor posting this image of the piano she used to barricade the door to her classroom.
I made sure I texted my mom and dad, made sure to let them know I was doing okay.
Luke Holgate is a freshman from Pennsylvania.
We were all just scared to death.
Law enforcement seen shackling the wounded suspect inside an ambulance, who authorities say is Phoenix Eichner, a 20-year-old student at FSU and the son of a sheriff's deputy.
The shooter is 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner. And he's the son of a Leon County Sheriff deputy. Our Deputy Eichner, has been with the Leon County Sheriff's Office for over 18 years. Unfortunately, her son had access to one of her weapons, and that was one of the weapons that was found at the scene.
President Trump today briefed on the shooting.
It's a shame. It's a horrible thing. Horrible that things like this take place.
According to the Gun Violence Archive, this is the 80th mass shooting so far this year, the 6th in Florida.
Joining us now is former San Bernardino Police Chief Jared Bourguignon, who guided his department through one of America's worst mass shootings back in 2015. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with where this happened on the FSU campus, right? A populated, wide open space. Talk to us about how this space is likely a potential target, or a space like this can be a potential target.
Well, we've seen in a number of these shootings that quite often, as somebody is planning to do this type of violence, they're going to look for some place where they can kind of create maximum damage or maximum casualties. So they look for places where people gather. That's the very reason that we in law enforcement look to really truly secure, to the best of our abilities, areas where people gather and events and things like that.
And, you know, we've seen so many scenes like this. And as a parent, we often are out and about and we wonder if we were in a situation like this, what would we do? Where would we go? So how can people stay safe and aware when they're out and about in a crowded space like that FSU campus?
Yeah, you know, we've gone through so many iterations of this type of training. It's hard. You're hard pressed to find somebody that hasn't heard the term run, hide, fight. You know, just be aware of your surroundings. Don't live your life with a degree of paranoia, but always be aware of what's happening around you, and to some degree have a plan in your head of what you want to do when these things happen. As a parent, we all fear being disconnected with our kids or not being able to get a hold of us. Technology has made that so much easier now with the ability to connect by cell phones. But what we often find in incidents like this is that when people run, sometimes they leave their cell phones where they are and they run away without that. Hopefully your loved ones get a hold of you as soon as possible, you know, borrowing somebody else's phone. But the other thing to do is follow law enforcement's direction, because not only from the standpoint of being involved in an incident like this and getting to a place of safety and following direction, law enforcement will almost always set up a reunification center, some type of area where they can reconnect loved ones. It may take a little while, but that is part of the response plan that every agency really puts together when these happen.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about the suspected shooter. We learned that the suspected shooter is the son of a local deputy, and investigators believe at least one of the weapons used in the shooting belonged to the deputy and was initially police issued. So can you walk us through that? Can you explain that to us, how something like that happens?
Yeah, so it's my understanding from other reports that I've seen that she purchased the weapon after she was finished carrying it on duty. That is not uncommon in the law enforcement profession. Agencies will, from time to time, as weapon systems get old, they may transition to a new platform. When that happens, everything in their existing platform has value, and a vendor may take it on a trade-in, but agencies will quite often give officers or deputies the opportunity to purchase the weapon that they carried on duty. With that said, though, there are still policies in place. Virtually every agency in the country has a policy that says that employees, officers, deputies must make reasonable efforts to secure and maintain their equipment. Now, there's a lot of interpretation for what reasonable is, and some agencies are much stricter on that. In this case, the fact that the son was over 18 years old, he was an adult, it may very well be that the gun was secured, but he knew how to get a hold of it for reasonable reasons.
He certainly did. So many questions, and hopefully we'll get some of those answers as this investigation moves forward. Former San Bernardino Police Chief Jared Bourguignon, thank you so much for your time and insights. Appreciate it. Joining us now is Andre Perez, a student at FSU University and the chapter leader for Students Demand Action at FSU, an organization focused on ending gun violence. Andre, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a really long day, really tough day for you and everyone there on campus. we understand that you were near the student union building, right, when this all played out today. So walk us through what you saw and what happened.
Right. And thank you for having me on tonight. Like myself and many others, just woke up today to just want to attend school, get a degree. I was at the Bellamy building attending one of my classes, going over one of the assigned readings that, of course, we were supposed to discuss over today. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Around 12 o'clock, a warning just went out that there was an active threat on campus. Immediately, myself and my fellow classmates shut off the lights, barricaded the door, hid in our corners. Myself and many others, of course, started immediately texting our families, our friends, those that we hold near and dear to our hearts. From there, just giving it a couple more minutes, the police and SWAT team, of course, swept the building, ensuring that there were no threats within the building, and of course, ensuring that no one was hurt. And from there, for a couple of hours, just being escorted out of the building, being escorted by police to another building to ensure that everyone's accounted for, that again, no one is hurt. And so just immediately just leaving the building, just seeing a lot of police vehicles around, a lot of course, armed police officers, helicopters around. And of course, it was a very emotional and intense situation. A lot of people were crying. Just a lot of people were just in disbelief of what had just happened. And so it's a really shocking and really unfortunate day for many of us here at Florida State.
What were you thinking in that moment? And I know you just said there were a lot of people that were crying. This was obviously a very tense situation. I can only imagine you just don't know what exactly is going on. But for you, being there, knowing that there is something bigger taking place outside of that classroom, what was going through your mind?
I was just afraid. I mean, to put it bluntly, where my classroom was sitting was right around the corner from where the incident had occurred. And so just the possibility that whether they were able to apprehend the suspect then and there, or just, we didn't know. We're waiting for alerts and we're waiting for what was to come. Just it was a general sense of fear then and there. And of course, there was that sign of relief that came from, of course, being escorted out and ensuring that the threat was neutralized. But then came a sense of sadness because, of course, hearing the news that we had students passing away, people were injured, sent to the hospital, and just hearing how crazy the situation had just become really embodies what myself and many other students were feeling that day, which is just a disbelief ultimately, and of course, knowing that a couple of my fellow peers had passed away was really, really disheartening.
Yeah, it's so sad. We are thankful that you are okay. I'm sure your family is thankful as well. Let's talk a little bit about the work that your organization does there on campus and the impact that this shooting may have on it.
Right. I mean, Student Cement Action, I got involved later in the later half of last semester because I believed in one thing, and which is preventing gun violence. Many of my peers and I are frankly exhausted and tired of this constant desensitization of gun violence, mass shootings occurring every week, every day. It's unfortunate. It really is, and that's one piece of why I wanted to really get involved. Of course, like everyone who wakes up every day, no one expects that this is going to be something that happens. And that's just a part of something that, frankly, we don't want happening in the future. A lot of our legislature, there's a bill currently right now, HB 759, that aims to lower the age limit to 18 to purchase a firearm. And of course, being in the Gen Z generation, right? I grew up with Parkland, and just seeing all these tragedies happening across our nation, growing up and graduating high school, coming into college. It's really an unfortunate thing to be to constantly be exposed to. So the work that we're doing here with Student Cement Action, of course, is to plead with our lawmakers, plead with our legislatures, please prioritize public safety first. That's most importantly. There are statistics that have consistently shown that if a greater access to firearms will lead to greater gun violence in our communities. So being part of this organization has truly been a stepping stone for, of course, the work that we're doing and wanting to prevent gun.
Yeah. Andre, thank you so much for joining us and for the work that you're doing there on campus. Again, an absolute tragic day there at FSU. And again, thank you for your time. I want to go now to Catherine Falders, who's been digging into this. Catherine, what have you learned?
Hey, so there's a lot of details that we still are working to confirm here, but we know that Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, of course, traveled down to El Salvador with the intention of meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We know what Chris Van Hollen said earlier today, that he was turned away from that El Salvador prison when he tried to visit him. But photos have just surfaced on social media that show Van Hollen meeting with him. Now, these photos were posted by Chris Van Hollen. He showed that he appeared to be sitting down for a meal with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It's essentially all he said, that he had the privilege of meeting with him. He said tonight he had the chance to meet with him. He's called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his messages of love. That's according to Chris Van Hollen. He says that he looks forward to providing a full update upon his return to the United States, given that he was able to sit down with him. There's still a lot of unanswered questions here. We know that he was deported wrongfully in an administrative error. The United States admits to that mega prison in El Salvador, and we know that that is where he has been. There's, again, a lot of questions to be answered here. Where is he right now? The government has been required to provide updates on that to a district judge. Will they say something on this tomorrow? We know that the president of El Salvador has appeared to suggest that he is now in the custody still of El Salvador. But again, where is that? Where is he physically? He's in their custody. Is he back in that prison? Still a lot of unanswered questions here. But what we do know is that Van Hollen was able to sit down with him face to face, it appears, over a meal today in El Salvador. Again, the senator says he'll provide updates when he gets back to the United States, which I assume will be in the coming hours. So we will likely learn more then.
And Catherine, as you know, Garcia was sent there to El Salvador, to that notorious prison, by the Trump administration back in March, despite an immigration court order preventing his deportation. And you also mentioned the Trump administration acknowledged that he was sent there in error. So what have they said recently about this? Can you kind of walk us through what they've said, despite saying that this was an error and saying that he was going to remain there? What else are they saying?
Well, they've said a lot here, and you know, it kind of depends where you go to consult your information, right? If you go to the court and you see what the administration has said to the court, which they have consistently said that he was deported to El Salvador wrongly, in error, because he was not supposed to be deported there. And look, if you talk to people at the White House, they would say, oh, he was correctly deported there. The district judge in Maryland, who's overseeing this case, again, has asked the administration to provide consistent updates. And frankly, she has said, like, in the next couple of weeks that she wants discovery. She wants to learn more information about this. All of these things that these judges are saying, the administration is appealing. So the bottom line is that they don't believe that they need to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia, or I should say facilitate the return of him to the United States. But at the end of the day, it's very simple here. We know that the Supreme Court ordered his return. We know that the administration has not done that. And we also know that a circuit court essentially has denied the Trump administration's efforts to appeal this order from this district judge. And it's a fascinating thing. And I just want to read this quote, because the administration wants to appeal everything that the courts have said, but a circuit court has said, at least just a couple hours ago, and I want to read this quote: "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case," referring to the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, "it is not hard at all. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process. That is the foundation of our constitutional order." So this is obviously making its way through the higher courts. This appeals court has spoken. So the question is really, what happens next? What does the government say? What do they say about this meeting? What do they say about the fact that he was apparently facilitated out of this prison? And where is he now? Again, many unanswered questions here that hopefully we get answers to in the coming hours.
Absolutely. All right, Catherine Falders for us tonight. Thank you so much for checking in with us and updating us on this situation. And we do have breaking news tonight. A federal grand jury in New York returned a 4-count indictment against alleged CEO killer Luigi Mangione. We're joined now by senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky. Aaron, what are you learning about this major development in Mangione's case?
Stephanie, this is a critical step in a long prosecution that could end in the death penalty. He's accused in this indictment of stalking, 2 counts of stalking, a firearms offense, and murder through the use of a firearm. And that count makes him eligible for the death penalty. The Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, has already said that the Trump administration intends to pursue the death penalty, something his attorney has called barbaric and a political stunt. They're trying to stop it. But Stephanie, this is something the administration is intent on in order to send a deterrent message. And that's a message even the last administration wanted to send. You'll remember Mangione's rather cinematic return to New York to face state murder charges in connection with the death of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO. There he is, getting off a helicopter, a long walk with the mayor of New York right there behind him. And very quickly, he was taken into federal custody to face federal charges because the administration wanted the deterrent of the death penalty, something New York does not have. Now that he's been indicted, that's a critical step in the process, Steph.
Mangione's defense will have a lot of work to do. Aaron Katursky for us tonight. Thank you so much, Aaron. For more on this, we're joined now by civil rights attorney Areva Martin. Areva, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you coming in. So just kind of walk us through, what does this 4-count indictment mean for Luigi Mangione's case?
Well, it means that he is facing very serious charges. We have already heard from Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, saying that she's going to seek the death penalty. And 2 of the charges related to this indictment are charges that actually carry with them the possibility of the death penalty, murder with use of a firearm. And we know that the attorneys for Mangione have been fighting with the Department of Justice, arguing that they weren't given a fair opportunity to present their case about why the death penalty is not appropriate in this case. So we're going to see this major battle played out over the next year or so as the Justice Department is moving forward, according to the Attorney General, with its efforts to have this be a death penalty case, and the defense arguing that this does not fit the requirement standards for a death penalty.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, signaling that their intention for the death penalty. So speaking specifically with the defense, what do they have to do to avoid this, especially now after this indictment?
Stephanie, they have a very difficult case ahead of them. This was a brazen attack on this healthcare CEO, midday, Manhattan, busy streets. The evidence that's already been collected has suggests that there's not much of a defense that Mangione is going to be able to mount in this case. But obviously, defense lawyers have a job to do. They've got to present the most zealous, the most persuasive case that they can. But given the evidence, the forensic evidence, given the manifesto that was found at the time or shortly after this murder, it's unlikely that we're going to see the circumstances get any better for Mangione. I think he is, unfortunately, according to some, he's had thousands of people come to his aid who have supported him. Many people believe this should not be a death penalty case. Others believe this is exactly the kind of case that the Justice Department should pursue the death penalty. So it's going to be played out in the court of public opinion as well as inside of a courtroom.
You said it, and we'll watch it all play out. Thank you so much, Areva Martin, for us tonight. And Areva will join us again shortly to discuss other legal news today. Thank you. In an ABC News exclusive with George Stephanopoulos, we're getting a first look inside the Pennsylvania governor's mansion that was damaged by an arson fire. George joined Governor Josh Shapiro and his wife Lori as they walked the charred rooms together for the first time. The home was firebombed after a suspect called 911 saying he did it for Palestinian people.
We're seeing this kind of rise in threats and attacks all across the country. Homeland Security has been warning about it for years.
Yeah. It's real. I mean, this is sadly a real part of our society today. And it needs to be universally condemned, George. I don't care if it's coming from the left, from the right. I don't care if it's coming from someone who you voted for or someone who you didn't vote for, someone on your team or someone on the other team.
George will have more of his time with the governor and the First Lady tomorrow on Good Morning America. Eric and Lyle Menendez's long-awaited resentencing hearing took place and has been delayed until further notice. In a last-minute move, L.A. District Attorney Nathan Hochman argued the judge needs to see the state parole board's new risk assessment of the brothers before deciding if they should get a reduced sentence for the shotgun murders of their parents. The brothers, you may remember, were sentenced in 1996 to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of their parents. Defense attorneys argued the brothers acted out of self-defense after years of sexual abuse by their father. Prosecutors said the brothers killed their parents for a multi-million-dollar inheritance. And for more on this, civil rights attorney Ariva Martin is back in studio with us. Ariva, thank you so much for sticking around to talk about all these legal developments. So this has been a roller coaster of a ride, yes, of a hearing, of a case, really. How do today's developments impact the brothers' fight for their release? Will that happen?
Well, one thing to note, Stephanie, is they won a major victory on Friday when the court allowed the resentencing hearing to move forward because the prosecution had withdrawn the motion for resentencing filed by the predecessor district attorney. So the fact that they're even at this point is a victory. Now, what happens after that remains to be seen. Very explosive day in court today as the prosecution and defense attorney were going at it over this risk assessment report, and the judge determining that he needed more time and more information and delayed the resentencing hearing that was supposed to take place today and Friday. There were about 10 family members, Menendez family members in court ready to testify, and that will have to wait because as of now, it looks like it won't be until at least May or so until they're back in court with the evidence being presented to the court.
This is drawn out once again.
Yes.
All right, we will be watching. Ariva, thank you so much. Thanks for sticking around. Really appreciate that. Well, coming up, our Linsey Davis sits down with Melinda Gates, who is going public with her personal story for the first time. But first, the massive scandal rocking California's juvenile justice system. Take a look at this shocking video showing teens in detention pitted against each other, allegedly allowed by those who should be keeping them safe. That's coming up.
Detention officers allowed and in some instances even encouraged 69 fights in 6 months.
Welcome back. A leaked video has sparked a massive scandal, uncovering an alleged fight club featuring gladiator-style brawls in a California juvenile hall, where accusers say winners would be rewarded with better food and favors from guards. Those guards now accused of putting those they were meant to protect at risk. Our Linsey Davis reports.
The video is stunning. Look closely. The room is beautifully decorated for the holidays as all hell breaks out. Adults can be seen standing idly by, some allegedly encouraging as the teens meet in the center and swing wildly, pummeling each other, and in particular, this one boy.
He was placed in, what's been known as their gladiator arena and brutally beaten. I said, this can't be real.
The shocking video, dubbed by some as gladiator fights, was taken at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall and leaked to the media. The adults are probation officers. The teens, according to authorities, are pitted against each other, often fighting for better food and favors, or to retaliate against a teen who's acting out against an officer.
These weren't random instances of two kids who had a disagreement. This was a plan and a conspiracy between the probation department, its officers, and these attackers.
The leaked surveillance video has sparked backlash, becoming part of an investigation by the California Department of Justice, leading to a 71-count criminal indictment with 30 probation officers facing criminal charges for abuses at Los Padrinos.
Detention officers allowed and in some instances even encouraged 69 gladiator fights to occur between 143 youth in their care. 69 fights in 6 months.
And shining a light on what many say is a dysfunctional juvenile justice system in Los Angeles.
These are kids that are coming from Black and brown communities, and they are coming from, more than oftentimes, they're coming from broken homes where they've already experienced abuse, they've already witnessed violence. So when you look at the circumstances that they're subjected to, you feel bad.
The family of the young man seen in this video is also taking civil legal action against LA County, and they're not alone.
Motherhood means everything. I don't have a life without my kids. My kids are my life. So as long as they're happy, I'm happy. I have 2 sons, now 19 and 17.
Brittany Allen has lived in Los Angeles her entire life, raising her 2 boys. Her youngest, a straight-A honor roll student and budding athlete who dreams of going to the Olympics.
Oh my God, he's everything. So he's athletic, he is intelligent, he is outgoing, he is just a great kid overall. If I've had a bad day, just his smile lightens up a room.
But in August of last year, Brittany learned her young boy, then just 16, had been detained at Los Padrinos.
It was just unfortunate that he kind of hung around the wrong crowd or whatnot. But, you know, things happen, you know, in life, and I don't hold that to my kids. You know, we all make mistakes. No one's perfect.
Inside the detention center, she says his world quickly devolved into a waking nightmare, experiencing what his attorney says are beatings and abuse, all allowed by the probation officers.
My son was, you know, assaulted while they were at the juvenile facility. And in that midst of being assaulted, he was also stabbed. So I immediately tried to get in contact with juvenile hall. I'm frantic, I'm distraught, I'm upset because my son is in a predicament where I'm unable to be hands-on.
But Brittany says the horrific ordeal didn't end there. She says he was attacked multiple times while being detained at Los Padrinos, once so badly he was knocked unconscious.
You know, he's bleeding from the mouth, bleeding from the nose, and now he has chipped teeth that are just, they're chipped all throughout his mouth. I mean, it made me feel helpless, honestly.
Desperate for help, she enlisted civil rights attorney Jamal Tucson, who's also representing the family of the boy in the video.
I was shocked. I was appalled. No kid deserves this. No kid deserves to be brutally assaulted. This was a young man put in a position trying to turn his life around. When the people entrusted for his safety threw him to the wind and left him to be brutally assaulted and left unconscious. As a result, his medical treatment is ongoing.
It's unfortunate that, you know, the kids are here, the minors are there. You know, they made a mistake. No one's perfect, but that does not mean that they're supposed to be mistreated or that the facility should be ran like a gladiator facility where they get a kick out of the kids, you know, fighting and being injured. They're supposed to be safe.
Brittany filed a civil lawsuit against Los Angeles County Probation Chief Guillermo Vieira Rosa and 10 probation officers at Los Padrinos, accusing them of violating her son's civil rights.
As a probation officer, you not only have a duty to protect, which means you are looking after the welfare of all the children at the Los Padrinos Detention Center, but you have a duty to intervene. And what that means is if you see one kid attacking another, you have a duty to stop it.
The probation department is responsible for committing, in my opinion, the ultimate crimes against young people in its custody. They are complicit in harm against young people.
Eshe Jackson is a commissioner on the Probation Oversight Commission, a civilian task force created to reform and monitor the probation department. Eshe knows the system better than most. As a teen, she was detained in the juvenile system multiple times, where she saw firsthand the stunning abuses play out before her eyes.
There are examples of me being charged with packing out, which just means to kind of jump a young person, someone else in custody. I was charged with doing that, and it was also done to me. And so as we're talking about my experience in juvenile hall, it's a very personal and relatable account because I was there firsthand.
Tell me about your reaction the first time you saw the videos from Los Padrinos.
I am not surprised by what I witnessed in that video because that is what I understand to be happening when there are not outside eyes inside of those facilities. And I'm just glad that the footage was leaked so that people can understand what's really happening behind there. And I'm more concerned about the instances that we'll never know about.
At the heart of the issue, many say the probation officers themselves. A 2023 Inspector General's report concluded that on any given day, a number of probation officers simply didn't show up for work, which led to safety issues. But Eshe and others maintain that the abuses, like those seen in the video, run so much deeper.
Going back into the facilities, I'm not surprised by the condition because it's only worsened over time. I never expected for it to get better, but I don't remember things being as bad in the 2000s, or maybe the realities of it were sort of normalized and you just thought that was the status quo. And so now I'm on the other side of that. I have an oversight role. You really understand that some of the things that you experienced were not normal.
The first time I saw the video involving my minor client, I was shocked. I was terrified. I was particularly alarmed that the officers involved knew there was a camera running. And if they were willing to do this on film, God help us for when the camera is not catching what's transpiring there.
Most of the officers charged in the Los Padrinos case were arraigned last month. The rest will be later this week. In a statement to ABC News, the Los Angeles County Probation Department writes in part, "We want to emphasize that accountability is a cornerstone of our mission, and we have zero tolerance for misconduct of any peace officers, especially those dealing with young people in our system. All officers named in the indictments are currently on leave without pay." While these incidents are deeply troubling, we believe this marks an important step toward rebuilding trust and reinforcing our commitment to the meaningful changes we are proposing in our juvenile facilities. And the union representing the probation officers wrote in part, "Our members deserve to be treated with fairness and due process, just as they provide to those in their custody. We do not condone any unlawful behavior, and we will do everything in our power to support our members as they navigate this difficult situation." The attorney for one of the directors of Los Padrinos spoke to our Los Angeles affiliate, KABC.
My client didn't set up any fights. He didn't know about any fights. So I'm not sure how they got him into this as an accomplice. There's no evidence of that. And there will be none.
Since his ordeal last year, Brittany Allen's son has been released from Los Padrinos. He's now in a transitional home and is getting medical treatment for his injuries. He plans to go to college after he graduates this year. But for Brittany, no outcome in court will change the trauma her son endured.
At the end of the day, that can be anyone's child. No child should be mistreated because they're at a juvenile facility. But I mean, I would like for the facility to be shut down. Sadly, my son's incident was not the first incident. At this time, I mean, they've already proven that they can't do the job. So they need to just find somewhere else, possibly to, get the kids some help.
Our thanks to Linsey Davis for that extensive report. Thank you so much. Coming up, an American citizen blamed for a deadly plane hijacking in Central America. How that suspect was finally taken down. Welcome back. Now to the dramatic hijacking involving Americans in the Central American country of Belize. Police say an American citizen hijacked a small plane at knife point, demanding to be taken out of the country. Here's ABC's Matt Rivers with more on those terrifying moments.
Tonight, the dramatic scene on a runway in Belize. Passengers running away from a small plane as authorities with guns race toward it. On board, an alleged hijacker who was a U.S. citizen shot dead by a passenger with a gun. It all happened aboard a flight from Corozal to San Pedro. 14 passengers aboard, including 2 Americans. Police say the plane was hijacked by U.S. citizen Akinyela Sawa Taylor, wielding a knife shortly after takeoff. Officials say the hijacker demanding to be taken out of the country, insisting the plane land to get more fuel. But as the plane was touching down, officials say a passenger aboard the flight with a licensed gun shoots and kills the suspect.
We're praying for him. He's our hero, I must say.
A frightening story. Our thanks to Matt Rivers for that report. A horrific cable car accident has left 4 people dead and 1 person seriously injured in southern Italy near Naples. Authorities say one of the supporting cables of the car reportedly snapped, causing the cabin to plunge to the ground. 16 other passengers were rescued from another cabin that was suspended in midair further down that mountain. Coming up, Melinda French Gates, up close and personal. Our Linsey Davis's wide-ranging conversation right after the break. Welcome back. Melinda French Gates, philanthropist, mother, billionaire, and a woman of humble beginnings. Tonight, she's out with a new book and telling her story to our Linsey Davis.
You seem, in general, like a private person. Why go so public with your story?
Well, I know that when we share our stories, we are all better off. We connect with one another's humanity. And I've met so many women around the world that in sharing their stories, they become better versions of themselves.
You talked about a commencement speech that you gave once. And at one point you say, be excited about the fact that you will encounter possibilities you haven't imagined yet and be willing to let what you learn shift your thinking about what you're on this earth to do. What do you believe that you're on this earth to do?
To make the world better. And even in my high school graduation speech, I quoted Ralph Waldo Emerson, and at the end of it, it says, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. And that's always been my definition of success. One person can make a difference in someone else's life.
Given that you have spent a large amount of money and time in trying to rid the world of malaria, HIV, what are your thoughts on the current administration really drastically reducing a lot of the money that is given to charities around the world?
I have been lucky enough to travel for the Gates Foundation for 25 years, in and out of so many low-income countries. And when I read that, I couldn't believe it. I was both angry and then immediately sad because I have met so many families who get services because of that U.S. foreign assistance. And so to know that 16 million women won't have access to good maternal health services around the world, to pull back things that previous Republican administrations and Democratic believed in, it feels senseless to me.
It's been about 10 months since you left the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Subsequently, you've promised to spend, I believe, another $1 billion through next year, this time focusing on Pivotal. Tell us about the work that you're doing.
Sure. This $1 billion commitment that I made was really on behalf of women. And it's saying that we need to create more opportunities for women. We need to look at things with the $1 billion. We're spending about $250 million of it on women's health, but also supporting organizations that are helping get more women into artificial intelligence. Because I know that when women have a seat at the table in creating products, what happens is you get a different lens on society. Not a better lens, not a worse lens than men, but a different lens.
And is it 2% of funding that goes out for charities? Only 2% is focused on women and girls. How do you go about trying to balance that?
You role model it. So you role model it for other philanthropists. You role model it for other people. You say these are important issues that we can make progress on. Again, women have an idea, a lens, because they have a different role in society. And I believe all ideas should come forward.
I want to go back to the book. You tell this story very early on about perspective, really, and how we see ourselves. And you tell that through your water, not a wave. Give us a sense of why that was important for you to share.
We travel through life as a series of waves, lots of friends, lots of family, but often if we're, say, the large wave and we're about to crash on the shore, we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to crash. There'll be nothing left of me. But if we have a smaller wave, somebody, a friend, a family member, a coworker, who can keep perspective on who we are, they can remind us that we are so much more than just a wave. In that case, we're water.
You say at one point it was not only the hardest decision, but the most important for you to divorce Bill. I understand the hardest, but where does the most important come in?
Because I have to be true to myself. At the end of the day, when we die, we answer for ourselves, only us. And if I'm in a relationship with a friend or a coworker, or in that case, an intimate relationship, and I can't live my values fully, that's on me.
Give us a sense, when you turned 58 as a grandmother at that point, how that changed your life, and not just personally, but beyond, maybe even how you want to share charitably.
When things like the Dobbs decision came out, I say to myself, my gosh, my granddaughters will have fewer rights than I had. And so that makes you more, at least for me, more say, okay, how is the work that I do really going to advance society on behalf of them?
Making the world basically a better place to live. Would that ever remotely include a run for public office?
No.
Never?
Never.
Why have you ruled that out?
I love my work. I love my family life. I want time with these granddaughters. I know what you give up to be in those roles. And that isn't me. That isn't the best way for me to serve with my talents.
I just want to do a really quick rapid fire. The road not taken for Melinda.
Having a fourth child?
Best piece of advice. Can you actually name it in the book?
Set your own agenda or someone else will.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about you?
Life must be easy, completely easy for me. And yet I'm a human being just like everyone else.
What do you hope that people take away from this book?
With transitions, they can be so much growth and beauty and hope and possibility.
And you can see Linsey's full in-depth interview with Melinda French Gates streaming at 8:30 p.m. Eastern and later on Hulu. That is our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos in for Linsey Davis. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us.